I had a secret desire that no one knew about in my quiet life. My name is Chloe. I am 29 and live in a small town called Maple Creek. Maple Creek is calm and slow. It has nice parks and little coffee shops. I live alone in a small flat. The flat is warm and small. It has one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with a large window. I like to watch people from that window, I say. I work in the local library. I love books. Books take me to many places in my mind. But sometimes reading does not fill everything. Some nights I feel very lonely. Most of my friends are married now. They have homes and children. They are busy with their families. We see each other rarely, maybe once a month for coffee. Evenings are the hardest time. When I come home from work, the house is very quiet. I eat dinner alone and watch TV alone. I read alone. The silence can feel heavy, like a blanket I cannot remove. I long for someone to speak with, to share small things, to laugh with. One night my friend Sarah called. Sarah asked gently how I was. I said I was okay, only tired. Sarah knew me well and asked, "Are you feeling lonely again?" I felt the truth and whispered yes. Sarah suggested trying online dating. She said many people meet this way now. I felt afraid. Meeting strangers on the internet felt risky. I told Sarah I was not sure. Sarah only said, "Try it. Be careful. Talk first. What do you have to lose?" That night I made a profile with trembling hands. I wrote simple facts: I like books, quiet walks, and tea. I added a photo of myself smiling by the library. I felt nervous and closed the site fast. Maybe it was a bad idea, I thought. A few days went by and I did not visit the site. Fear held me back. Then one lonely evening I remembered Sarah's words. What do you have to lose? I asked myself. I opened the site again. There were some messages. My heart beat fast. Most said simple things like, "Hi, you look nice." One message stood out. It came from a man named David. He wrote, "Hello, Chloe. I see you like books. I love reading too. Your smile looks kind." His profile showed brown hair and warm brown eyes. He smiled in his photo and seemed friendly. He was 32 and lived about an hour away. He liked hiking, movies, and cooking. He looked ordinary and nice. I answered, "Hello David, thank you. Yes, I love books. What are you reading now?" He replied fast and we began to chat. We talked about books, favorite writers, and movies. We spoke of dreams. He wanted to travel more and I hoped to have a small garden someday. We messaged every day. Each morning I woke and found a message from him, "Good morning, Chloe. Have a nice day." It made me smile. In the evenings we chatted for hours. He asked about my day at the library and truly listened. He made me laugh with jokes and told stories about his job. He worked with computers. I did not always understand, but I liked his voice when we called. Talking to David filled the quiet parts of my life. I no longer felt so alone. I felt happy and excited. I looked forward to his messages and calls. He felt like a close friend, maybe something more. After 2 weeks he asked to meet. "Can we see each other?" he asked. I was nervous again. Meeting someone is scary, but he felt kind and real. I agreed. We chose a coffee shop in my town, a public place that felt safe. On the day I changed clothes 3 times and checked the mirror often. My hands were cold as I walked to the cafe. I worried he might not like me or I might say something odd. I found him by the window. He looked like his photos, maybe even nicer. He stood and smiled, saying, "Chloe, you look beautiful." I blushed and thanked him. He said I looked nice too. We sat and ordered coffee. The talk was easier than I expected. For 2 hours we laughed and shared stories. It felt as if we had known each other a long time. When we said goodbye, he held my hand, warm and strong. I felt a spark. After that meeting we saw each other every weekend. Sometimes he came to Maple Creek, and sometimes I went to his town. We walked in parks, visited museums, and watched films. We cooked dinner in his larger, neat apartment. He was a good cook and always kind. Everything seemed perfect. David was very romantic. He brought flowers and left small notes. He often told me, "Chloe, you make me so happy." I felt as if I had known him for years, even though only weeks had passed. Being with him seemed unreal, like I was living inside a dream that I never wanted to wake up from. Just 1 month after our first conversation online, I was already having dinner at his apartment. He had made my favorite pasta, and the table was lit with soft candlelight while quiet music played in the background. That evening, his eyes held a seriousness I had never seen before. He reached across the table, took my hand, and spoke in a voice that was steady but full of emotion. "Chloe," he said, "I know this is fast. Very fast. But I feel something deep for you. I don't want to wait. I don't want to lose you. I love you. Will you marry me?" For a moment, my heart stopped. Marry him? After only a month? My thoughts screamed at me that this was too quick, that I didn't really know him. But then I looked into his eyes. They seemed honest, open, filled with sincerity. My heart was so full that it drowned out the doubts in my head. I thought about my lonely nights, about how different life felt with him in it. I didn't want to go back to being alone. I wanted this happiness to last forever. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, David, I will marry you." His face lit up with a smile so wide and genuine that it nearly made me cry. He slid a simple but beautiful ring onto my finger, and then he held me tightly. My eyes filled with tears, though I wasn't sure if they were from joy, fear, or both at once. 2 weeks later, we were married. Just like that. The ceremony was small, only me, David, Sarah, and 2 of his friends at the city hall. Sarah hugged me tightly before the vows and whispered, "Are you sure, Chloe? This is so fast." I forced a smile and said, "I'm sure. I love him." But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered the same question back to me, "Are you really sure?" After the wedding, I moved into David's apartment. I left behind my job at the library, my cozy little apartment by the window, and even Maple Creek, the small town that had been my safe place. A whole new life began. At first, it was like living inside a dream. David was loving and attentive. He brought me breakfast in bed. He surprised me with weekend trips to nearby towns. We spent hours talking about the future, about buying a house together, maybe having children one day. I kept telling myself, "See, this wasn't too fast. This is real." But then, small changes started creeping in. David was very particular about order. If I left a book on the table, he would immediately put it away. If I left a cup in the sink, he would sigh, long and loud, as if I had done something terrible. "Chloe," he said once, "please keep things tidy. I need order." I tried my best. I wanted to please him. But sometimes I forgot, and each sigh chipped away at me, making me feel smaller and smaller. He also didn't like me talking to Sarah much. Whenever I called her, he would ask, "Who are you talking to? What about?" Then he would add, "We're married now, Chloe. We should be enough for each other. You don't need to call old friends all the time." I didn't understand. Sarah was my best friend. Why couldn't I talk to her? Slowly, I started calling her less, lowering my voice when I did, as if I were doing something wrong. Around the same time, David began working late. Before we married, he was always home on time. Now he often came home after I was already in bed. When I asked why, he would say, "Work is busy. I have big projects." I wanted to believe him. But sometimes, when he walked through the door, I caught a strange scent on him, perfume. Not mine. Another woman's. The one time I asked him about it, his face darkened. "Are you accusing me?" he snapped. "Don't you trust me? I work hard for us." His anger frightened me, so I stopped asking questions. The man I lived with was not the same man I had met online. That man had always been calm, patient, and kind. The David I was married to now was moody, distant, and sometimes quick to anger. I didn't understand. Was this my fault? Had I changed him? Or had I simply never known the real David because everything had moved so quickly? Loneliness crept back into my life, even though I was no longer alone. I missed my old apartment. I missed my quiet hours in the library. I missed the easy conversations with Sarah. I felt trapped in a life I had chosen too quickly. Then, one evening while cleaning, I found a box hidden deep in David's closet, behind old clothes. Curious, I opened it. Inside were letters. Love letters. They were from a woman named Lisa. The handwriting was delicate, and the words inside spoke of passion, of promises, of a future together. My hands trembled as I held them. Who was Lisa? He had never mentioned her. He had told me about some past girlfriends, but never her. Why would he hide this? Why didn't he tell me about someone who clearly meant so much to him? That night, when he came home, I showed him the letters. His face turned pale, then quickly red with anger. He ripped them from my hands and shouted, "Why were you going through my things? This is my privacy." "I wasn't going through your things," I tried to explain. "I found the box while cleaning." "Who is she, David? Why didn't you tell me?" But he refused to answer. He shouted about trust, about privacy, about how I had betrayed him by looking inside the box. His words spun around me like a storm, and I felt dizzy. How could he accuse me of breaking his trust when he had been hiding things from me? That fight was our biggest yet. He slept on the couch that night, leaving me alone in our bed. The silence pressed down on me heavier than ever before. I lay awake, asking myself painful questions. Had I married a stranger? Had I made the biggest mistake of my life? The days after that fight were cold and empty. David left early for work and came home late. We barely spoke, and when we did, our words were short and heavy. Dinner felt like a chore. The apartment no longer felt like a home, it felt like a hotel where two strangers happened to stay. I missed the laughter we used to share. I missed the warmth in his eyes. Now, when he looked at me, his gaze felt distant, guarded. I had never felt more alone, not even when I lived by myself. Finally, I picked up the phone and called Sarah when David wasn't home. My voice shook as I whispered, "Sarah, I think I made a mistake. A terrible mistake." Tears slid down my cheeks as I said it out loud. Sarah listened without judgment. She didn't say, "I told you so." Instead, she spoke softly, "Oh, Chloe. I'm so sorry you're hurting. Tell me what happened. And I did. I told her everything, the way he obsessed over neatness, how he didn't like me talking to her, how he came home late, the perfume, the letters from Lisa, and the fight that followed. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently, "Chloe, marriage is hard. And when it happens so quickly, it's even harder. You didn't really know him, and maybe he didn't really know you either. Have you tried talking to him calmly, when you're both not angry?" I shook my head, though she couldn't see it. "He just gets angry," I whispered. "He won't talk about Lisa. He says I broke his trust." Sarah sighed. "Maybe he's scared too. Maybe he thinks if you know everything about his past, you'll leave him." "That doesn't make it right, Chloe. But maybe that's why he's hiding. You both need to learn how to communicate, to be honest, even when it's painful." Her words sank into me. Maybe David wasn't only angry. Maybe he was also afraid. Maybe he felt vulnerable in ways I hadn't seen. That night, I decided to try again. I wanted to speak to him without anger, without shouting. So I made his favorite dinner. I lit the candles on the table, just like the night he proposed. When he came home, he looked surprised to see the glow of the candles. We ate quietly, the silence heavy but different this time. Afterward, I took a deep breath and said softly, "David. Can we talk, David? Please don't get angry. I just want to understand." He looked cautious, almost like he was preparing for bad news, but after a long pause, he nodded. I felt my heart beating in my throat as I tried to find the right words. "When I found those letters," I began carefully, "it hurt me. Not just because they were love letters, but because you never told me about her. About Lisa. It made me feel like there's a big part of your life you kept hidden. It made me wonder what else I don't know. It made me question whether I really know you at all." David dropped his gaze to his hands, staring at them as if the answers were written there. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. I waited, holding my breath, but I didn't push. Finally, his voice came out low and unsteady. "I should have told you about Lisa," he admitted. "We were together for 3 years. We were engaged. But she left me, for someone else." It shattered me completely. I honestly didn't think I could ever love again. When he finally raised his eyes, I saw sadness there, raw and unhidden. "But when I met you, Chloe, everything felt new again. You were kind. Gentle. You made me laugh. You made me believe in happiness again. But I was afraid that if I told you about Lisa, you would think I wasn't over her. Afraid you would compare yourself to her. Afraid you would leave me too." He reached across the table and took my hand, his grip firm yet trembling slightly. "Hiding it was wrong. I see that now. But when you found the letters, I felt exposed. I felt ashamed. And instead of being honest, I lashed out. I'm sorry, Chloe. I truly am." Hearing him speak like this shifted something inside me. His anger had once terrified me, but now I saw it for what it really was: pain, fear, vulnerability. In that moment, I realized he wasn't just angry. He was hurting. He was scared. Just like me. I whispered, "I was scared too, David. Scared that we rushed into marriage. Scared that you weren't who I thought you were. Scared that I'd made the wrong choice." That night, for the first time in a long time, we really talked. We didn't hide behind silence or walls of anger. We laid our fears bare, our doubts, our hopes. It wasn't an easy conversation. Tears fell. Words caught in our throats. Long silences stretched between us. But through it all, we listened. Truly listened. For the first time since we got married, it felt like we were trying to be partners, not just two people living in the same space, but two people trying to understand and support each other. Of course, things didn't magically become perfect after that night. Marriage isn't a fairy tale. It's messy, complicated, and filled with work. David was still obsessively neat, and sometimes his size still made me feel small. I still missed my old life, the library, my quiet evenings, my little window in Maple Creek. He still worked long hours, but he started calling me more often when he knew he'd be late. He began opening up about his feelings instead of shutting me out. And I tried to be more patient, more understanding of his need for order. Slowly, little by little, we began to rebuild. I started talking to Sarah regularly again, and to my surprise, David didn't complain anymore. He seemed to realize I needed her, that friendship was not something to take away. We found small ways to reconnect, taking evening walks, cooking meals together on weekends, sitting down to plan our future but at a slower pace this time. We learned something important during those months: marriage requires effort. It needs honesty. It needs patience. It needs forgiveness. And it demands constant communication. We also learned that marrying someone you met online, someone you didn't know deeply before, adds extra challenges. You skip the careful steps of slowly learning each other's habits, weaknesses, and histories. You jump into the deep water of marriage without checking how cold it is, without knowing where the rocks are. Sometimes the shock nearly drowns you. But sometimes, if you're both willing, you learn how to swim together. It has now been 1 year since we said I do. Is our marriage perfect? Absolutely not. Do I still have doubts some days? Yes. There are times I wonder if we moved too quickly, if we were blinded by loneliness and hope. But do I regret marrying David? That answer is harder. Some days I feel regret. Some days I don't. There are nights when the silence between us feels heavy again, and I lie awake thinking about Maple Creek, the life I left behind, and whether I should have stayed. But there are also mornings when we laugh over coffee, afternoons when he surprises me with a kind gesture, moments when I feel we are truly building something together. On those days, I remember why I said yes. This journey has taught me so much. I've learned that finding love online is possible, but love itself is only the beginning. Building a life together requires time to truly know each other, time to build trust, time to face hardships as a team. I've also learned how loneliness can push you into rushing decisions. Sometimes those decisions work out. Sometimes they bring pain. But each one teaches you something important. My rushed choice taught me about myself. About how deeply I fear being alone. About my desperate need for connection. But it also taught me about patience, about communication, about how hard real love can be. Maybe David and I will last. Maybe we won't. The truth is, I don't know what the future holds. But right now, we are trying. We are talking. We are learning to walk this path together, one step at a time. And if you're listening to my story, maybe you felt the same loneliness I felt. Maybe you're considering online dating, or maybe you've already met someone and things are moving fast. My advice is simple: be careful. Be honest, with yourself and with them. Don't let loneliness alone push you into a lifelong decision. Take your time. Get to know the person. Learn about their past, their flaws, their dreams. Ask questions. Listen carefully. And most importantly, listen to your own heart, but also to your mind. Love is beautiful, but it isn't enough on its own. It needs roots. It needs wisdom. It needs time. So please, I told myself, be gentle with yourself. It's okay to feel lonely sometimes. It's okay to want love desperately. But don't rush into it blindly. Your happiness matters. Protect it. Give it the time it deserves. This isn't a perfect story. It's not a fairy tale with a clear happy ending. It's a real story, full of mistakes, learning, and growth. And maybe, just maybe, that makes it worth telling. Life after that first year of marriage felt like a mixture of calm and storm. Some days were light and full of laughter, and some days brought memories and doubts that made my heart ache. But slowly, very slowly, I began to understand that marriage, especially one that starts so fast, is not about magic or instant happiness. It's about learning, adapting, forgiving, and growing together. David and I continued to face our challenges. He still liked order more than I ever could maintain. I sometimes forgot a plate in the sink or left a book on the table. And he would sigh. But over time I noticed a change. His sighs became quieter, softer, less like accusations and more like gentle reminders. And I began to laugh at my own little mistakes instead of letting them make me feel small. I also learned to set small boundaries. I could call Sarah anytime I wanted. I didn't need to whisper or hide my conversations. And David didn't complain. He saw how important my friends were to me, just as I saw how important his peace and routine were to him. It was a balance, fragile and careful, but it was ours. We started to build routines together, small rituals that made life feel less rushed. Sunday mornings became our time for coffee and walks. Sometimes, we would just wander around the city, talking about nothing and everything. Other times, we would cook together, experiment with new recipes, or even bake a cake just to laugh at how messy the kitchen became. But what truly began to change everything was the day David suggested we travel. Not far, just a weekend in a small town neither of us had been to. At first, I was hesitant. Travel meant leaving our routines, our comfort zones. But I agreed, and that trip became a turning point. We spent 2 days exploring quiet streets, little bookstores, and cafes where no one knew us. We talked for hours about our dreams, about fears we hadn't shared, and about the life we wanted to create. For the first time, I felt like we were building a partnership, not just coexisting. That trip was a reminder that love, patience, and understanding could grow in moments of shared discovery. Back at home, life was still not perfect. There were arguments, some small and some bigger. I sometimes wondered if rushing into marriage had been a mistake. But the arguments no longer scared me the way they had before. Now, they were opportunities to understand David better and to let him understand me. One quiet evening, months after that first argument over Lisa's letters, I found myself sitting by the window with a notebook. I began to write, just as I had when I lived alone. But this time, I wasn't alone in my thoughts. I had someone to share them with, someone whose voice would greet me each morning. Writing became a way to reflect on our marriage, to see how far we had come. I realized that love is not just about excitement or butterflies. It's about presence. It's about seeing the same person every day and choosing to stay, choosing to communicate, choosing to forgive and to accept. And it's about remembering that even when you think you know someone, there's always more to learn. Our relationship had grown deeper through honesty and confrontation. One night, I asked David why he hid the letters from Lisa for so long. I expected anger, defensiveness, maybe even regret. But he smiled softly, and I saw his vulnerability again. I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid you'd leave me, afraid you wouldn't understand. but now I see it differently. I see that honesty, painful honesty, creates trust. It's terrifying, but it's worth it. I nodded. I understood. That was the truth about love. It was terrifying. It could hurt, and it could surprise you. But it was always worth it when both people were willing to try. Over the next months, we kept building on this honesty. We began setting aside one evening a week, just for us, with no phones, no work, no interruptions. Sometimes we talked for hours, sometimes we just sat quietly, hands touching, hearts near. The connection deepened. Slowly, our laughter returned, warmer and fuller than before. One morning, as the sun poured into our apartment, David surprised me. He had drawn a small plan of a garden on paper. Not just any garden, but the one I had dreamed about. Flowers, vegetables, a little bench by the window. He handed me the paper and said, "I want to build this with you. Step by step." Tears filled my eyes. That small gesture was more than a garden, it was a promise. A promise that he was willing to invest in the life we wanted, together. And I realized that this was what love had always been about. Not the fast promises of a first month, not the rush of excitement, but the steady, patient work of creating something lasting. As the seasons passed, our lives intertwined further. Friends came back into my world without fear. I laughed freely, without hiding my voice or worrying about judgment. David began to trust me fully, and I trusted him. The small rituals we had created became anchors in our busy lives. One winter evening, as snow fell outside the window, I sat by the fire and looked at David across the room. He was reading quietly, a small smile playing on his lips. I thought about everything we had been through, the fast decisions, the loneliness, the arguments, the fears, the letters, and the honesty that followed. And I realized something profound: love, real love, was not about perfection. It was about persistence. It was about facing the unknown together, even when my heart wobbled in fear. And then I understood that this was the real ending, not a sudden dramatic twist, not a fairy tale conclusion, but a quiet, steady promise of life. A life that was ours, imperfect and beautiful. I leaned over and touched his shoulder. He looked up at me, his eyes warm and soft. "I love you," I whispered. He smiled, a gentle, certain smile. "I love you too, Chloe," he said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sudden. It was real. And it was enough. I had learned that loneliness can push you to rush decisions. I had learned that love can appear quickly, even from a screen and a few messages. But I also learned that building a life together takes work. It takes patience. It takes listening, forgiving, understanding, and accepting. It takes showing up every day, even when life feels ordinary or difficult. Some days, I still feel a little lonely. Some days, doubts creep in. But they don't define us. They are part of the journey. Some days, David and I laugh until our stomachs hurt. Some days, we sit quietly, holding hands, sharing nothing and everything at once. And every day, we try. That's what matters. The trying, the learning, the choosing to stay, to love, to face life together. That's where the magic lies. If you are listening to my story, maybe you are lonely too. Maybe you are thinking of rushing into love, of jumping too quickly, of hoping that connection will solve your emptiness. My advice is this: slow down. Take time. Listen to your heart, but also listen to your mind. Ask questions. Understand the past. Understand the flaws. Understand the dreams. And most importantly, understand yourself. Because love cannot be built on fear or loneliness. It must be built on truth, patience, and trust. It grows slowly, quietly, sometimes painfully, but that is how it becomes strong. I am not saying our story is perfect. It isn't. There were mistakes, heartbreaks, moments of fear. But there was also learning, forgiveness, growth, and love. And that, I think, is what makes it real. David and I are still learning, still trying. We may not have a perfect life, and we may still face challenges. But we have chosen each other, every single day. And that is enough for now. Love is not a story with a guaranteed happy ending. It's not a fairy tale. It's messy. It's complicated. But if you are willing to show up, to communicate, to forgive, to accept, and to keep trying, it can be beautiful. And sometimes, it can be more than beautiful, it can be life-changing. So if you are listening to my story, remember this: being lonely is okay. Wanting love is okay. Wanting connection is human. But take your time. Make wise choices. Learn about the person, learn about yourself, and above all, nurture patience and understanding. Because love is not just about meeting someone online or feeling sparks. Love is about choosing each other every day. Choosing honesty. Choosing patience. Choosing trust. Choosing growth. Choosing to face the world together, one small, brave step at a time. And maybe, just maybe, if you are brave and patient enough, that is how you find the love you have been looking for, not perfect, not instantaneous, but real. I hope my story helps someone. I hope it shows that mistakes do not have to ruin your life. That fear does not have to dominate your choices. That love, even fast, can survive if it is nurtured with care and honesty. And I hope you remember, above all, to be kind to yourself. Your happiness is important. Your heart deserves patience. Your life deserves truth. And when you find love, hold on to it, work for it, and cherish it every single day. Because that is the real story. The story of love, mistakes, learning, and growth. And that is my story.